Good evening, everyone doing today. God is good and God is good all the time. My name is Sermon J. Spirit Divine. I'm here to give you a word and a little show news on tonight. First we're gonna start with we have one nation and many leaders. For the last 2 years, this world been hit with violence after violence. We are one nation and many leaders. So all leaders that set in place, we all have responsibility, in doing our part in different areas. But it is all for the same reason, helping our America, trying to solve many issues as possible. So many of us leaders, we set policies together, and some of them make sure the policies stick, for law, so more responsibility that we are doing, so we don't need to low perm, but aim high, together for a breakthrough, on a solution on how we will try to stop all this violence, and that's what we're doing. A lot of people saying, oh, how are we going to stop the violence? It's hard for us to try to stop the violence, but we can do the best we can. And the main thing we are trying to do now is put all these policies together and make sure it's sticky. Make sure this policy is permanent. Because when I'm pulling up, these policies have been put in place, for this time, supposed to be permanent, but a lot of incidents is happening where these policies, have to be put back in place. They have to be sealed, and stamped permanent. So that's what we're trying to do, put all these policies together, and make sure they stick. So when crime do happen, we can pull these policies out. Now that's the best we can do right now. Put a limit on purchasing these guns to young people. Put on background check, on these people, and make it sure, that no one underage or no one with a criminal background, will be able to purchase these guns. So many things that need to be done to make it better, you know, but if all leaders can come together and how we can fix the issue, it can be done. So it can be done. We will put this world back in place again. It will be done. We have a mighty God that's on our side, and it will be done. So I see in the mix of everything. Now, in the mix of everything that's going on, I'm gonna tell you that Mr. President Bennett is still working. He is still working, helping the economy and the inflation. He also is working on a big project. Will be in action soon. So Bidenomics, would help out in so many jobs, to come. It will help out in many jobs. So that's the area, that he is working on. And he pretty much work on a lot of stuff that is going on. He helped the inflation by the insulin. He helped out on that. So former President Trump. And this is another thing I want to speak of. So much is going on, but the main issue that we should be focused on is these women in abortion. They have a choice. And they constantly is banning abortion. I just talked about that like 2-3 days ago about this lady in Texas. This lady in Texas, she goes for a checkup and her doctor telling her that her baby, don't have a brain, don't have a skull. But she had to carry it on for 9 months. But the doctor went on to get her abortion, but now he's serving time. And I think serving a lifetime in prison from doing that, that's just too much. That's just too much because that was a situation that needed to be done. So let's talk about former President Trump. Now he in a situation, that he needs to put all focus, on himself to clear his name. You know, uh, he should be concentrating, on how he would get through this and how he would get through this. And, he needs to be focused and putting all his energy, you, you know, onto himself. So how he would get himself out of this situation. So in the meantime, still to him clearing his mind, trying to find out ways of how he gonna get around all this stuff that coming at him. He threatening people. He's threatening people on the platform. He like threatening people on a radio station. That is unacceptable. It's threatening people like that. And throwing salt on someone else while you're in the mix of your own situation, and this person who are working to make a change in this nation. So I also had forgot to add this on to Mr. President Bidenomics. This project that he working on is over 13 million, new jobs, including 800,000 manufacturer jobs. That's his main goal, to try to make sure everyone have jobs. I talked about that last week that someone in in Louisiana, in Shreveport, had picked up a big old project, to help a whole lot of like over 1,300 jobs, and that is good. So unemployment below is 4%. So the longest stretch in the last 50 years, inflation has slowed every single month for the last 12 months. That's what he's been working on. When everybody else throwing salt and everybody else to concentrate on their own self, he is working, trying to build this nation. Trying to help people with jobs, trying to help elders with their medicine, lower the price down for. That's the type of stuff he's trying to do. So he building the economy. So, and we also have another situation, Florida schools, teaching personal benefits of slavery that's under a new Black history curriculum. So this is like, it's so much stuff is going on right now. You can't rewrite somebody else's story. That just like him. You doing so much stuff. Suppose somebody rewrite your story. And they say you this and say you that, you're gonna get mad. So you can't rewrite someone's story. So Florida, a 2023 social study curriculum will include a lesson on how slaves develop skills, that could be used for personal benefit. So they want to use this new Black history social study, for African American, to study section that will be taught to students from 6th to 8th grade. According to the state standards, the curriculum was approved. They tried to do this last year, and their council was still working on how they're going to get it put together as skills and this and that, trying to put it together to benefit them. So by Florida Board of Education on Wednesday. So this came about on Wednesday, and they've been working on this since last year, trying to rewrite Black history on how they got skilled. They told their story. So you can't rewrite a story that didn't told already. You can't rewrite somebody else's story. So you're trying to rewrite Black history. The original story, of our ancestors, of what they went through. So you don't know exactly what they went through to rewrite something as for skills. So our African American children, need to be taught on the original truth of their story, for the next generation to pass on. So let me read that again. So African American children, They need to be taught on the original truth of their story for the next generation to come. They need to know the good and the bad, of what had happened back then. We ain't gonna hide the bad stuff from them. They need to be taught the good and the bad. So when they get grown, they'll be able to tell this story to their children. This is a generation that's supposed to be passed on and on to generation. So sooner or later, we gonna have another generation coming behind us. You know, we gonna have another generation coming behind us. Because eventually, Jesus will return. So we need the original story to remain for our children to be taught on what they happened. It doesn't matter if it was bad. They need to know the good and the bad. So we will honor our history, and keep standing what is right. You don't have the right to rewrite our history. You're trying to erase, our full history and replace it with your own version of what happened. And that's not how you're supposed to do somebody else's story. You cannot rewrite your own version of someone that was enslaved. It's a lot they done went through. So you don't know exactly all the heartaches that they went through for you to just take and rewrite your own version. So we also have the Vice President Coleman. She has spoke on. She spoke on it saying to suggest that enslaved people somehow benefit from slavery is not misled. It is false. So she spoke on it. She said we will stand against, this is me speaking out, we will stand against rewriting slavery, under a new black history curriculum. So our black history is not to be erased. It's not to be rewritten. Our African American children, they need to learn the good and the bad. They need to be learned. We don't need to try to hide anything from them. They need to know everything that went on back then. Because they have children, they need to be taught of history. So they eventually gonna see it on TV or read it in books. So we're not trying to hide the bad stuff from the kids. They need to know the good and the bad of the history that our ancestors had to go through. So I request that our original black history, remain. I request that you all stop rewriting history. It is very disrespectful how y'all constantly keep touching our history like that. Constantly disrespecting the history of our ancestors, what they went through. So for the past 2 years, we have been fighting, for what our ancestors already had fought for. And so the policies that was already set for us, it being unsealed, meaning we have to restore it all over again. All this was already in place for us. So we got to try to constantly keep putting these policies back in place for our next generation to come behind us. We trying to put this policy back in place, trying to restore it, trying to file it and seal it, but because they constantly breaking the law or breaking these policies. So our history is here to remain, not to be erased and not to be rewritten. So this is the news on Florida school. They rewrite slavery for skills for social study class curriculum. And I'll also talk about we have one nation, we have many leaders. We have many leaders that we all do, we all have responsibility, and we do things in different areas, but it all end up, we all doing it for the same reason. So we also talk about President Trump. He making threatening statements and stuff. You're running for president. you know, and I request that you pull it out because we can't have this kind of president, you know, to be in seat and threaten people like this here. And all kind of stuff is still popping up. And the main thing that you threaten people, you know, and this not the kind of president we need for 2024. That you're gonna have people shaking up because of the threat that you're doing. You want to do something that you said never was done before. That's not how President supposed to be speaking. You know, for people that you want to vote for you for the president. You know, so I do have a word for you today. You know, so the valley of the dry bones. You know, some of us been in the dry season. You know, I'm about to talk about the dry bones, how God can bring dry bones, dry season, your dry life. He can bring it all back to life. You know, so it's going to come from Ezekiel 37, verse 1 to 14. So the hand of the Lord, you know, was on me. This is Ezekiel talking. And he brought me out by the Spirit of the Lord and sent me in the middle of a valley, and it was full of bones. And imagine you dreaming. And then all of a sudden, you just wake up and you laying on all kinds of bones. He laying on all kinds of bones. This is in the valley. You know, I mean, this is in his vision. You know, a valley was full of bones. You know, so this vision illustrates the promise of Israel. You know, to new life. You know, in a nation to being restored. You know, both physical and spiritual. The dry bones of a picture of a Jewish captivity scattered, you know, and dead. You know, so he led me backwards and forward. Now Ezekiel is still talking. Now he said he was in the valley among all these bones, and he said God taking them backwards and forward. You know, among, and he said he saw a great many bones on the floor of the valley, bones that was very dry. You know, now this story means something that we're gonna get to. You know, it's saying dry bones, but you know it means something. You know, so God's power to restore the tribes of Israel from the scattering condition and breathe life into them. Now it also can represent his power to re-erect his people. Now the dry bones is Israel. You know, because you know their hometown, their homeland is the Canaanite, the Canaan. You know, so remember God took them out of slavery and get them their own land, but then they've been kicked out of their own land and the whole land been destroyed. You know, so God gonna restore them. You know, so he said God asked him, you know, son of man, you know, can these bones live? You know, and Ezekiel had said, Lord, you alone know. Now he's saying that God knows that he the one, you know, can bring these bones back to life. You know, but still no, he asking them. You know, he asking them, can these bones live? You know, can your life be so dry? You know, do you believe that your life can can have breaths bring back into your life again? You know, so this are other words that he's saying. Do you believe, you know, that these bones, that your dry life can be restored back again? That breath can be right back into your life again. You know, so we know that God can bring life to the dead bones, and he will bring life again to our spiritual dead people. And that's what he's saying with Israel. You know, Israel now is sin with worshiping other gods and stuff. You know, and building, you know, stuff, bowing down to stuff that they didn't build. You know, so they were supposed to be in a holy nation. You know, so they're spiritual dead. You know, so God is the only one can bring their spiritual dead back to life. You know, so sometimes our life, you know, can be like a dry season. You know, it will seem like, you know, if you will ever get out of this dry season, just like those dry bones, you know, life again, you know, but God can do the impossible. Like he about to perform right in front of Ezekiel, you know, right in front of his face. He gonna show him that nobody but God, can do what he's about to do. To give you a new life again. Now he can turn your dry, dead bones, back into life. He can turn dry, dry life, back to new again. Anything that dry and dead in your life, God can turn it around. You know, we just have to keep on praying. I'm still praying some things to turn around. And sometimes you can have all kind of stuff, right? Among you that's constantly keeping things out. But their case, they was worshiping other gods, building other stuff. So they wind up having all kind of kings, that had them worshiping other stuff. They wind up got kicked out of their own land, kicked, and then their land wind up and got destroyed. And now they're hopeless. Don't even think that their land gonna ever get put back together. And sometimes your life can feel that way. You can feel like your life just been so dead and so dry for a long time. And you wondering if it ever gonna get back better again. So then he said to me, so Ezekiel is still talking. He said God had said to him, prophesy to these bones and said to them, dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. So now God can do this himself. But he telling Ezekiel, I need you to prophesy on these bones. Prophesy on these bones, for these bones to come back to life. And now God could have speak this to himself, but he told Ezekiel to prophesy this bones. And sometimes we could do the same thing to our life. I'm constantly, trying to do it with my life. We can, if everything is deal with the mind and deal with the words that come out of your mouth, he said, and God do everything with his mouth. Just like he created this world. He spoke those words and things had happened. He said, speak these words. These bones will come back to life. So this is what the servant of the Lord said. To these bones, now he's telling them what to say, but these bones, I will make breath, into you, and you will come to life. So these dry bones represent the people that were spiritual dead, with no hope. So their nation are destroyed, and they don't have hope if it ever be put back together. So that means that's why I always say that's what helped me, keeping your hope alive. They lost all hope. So they don't think if everything gonna be stored back together. I'm constantly holding on and still moving, trying to move forward, even if I'm weak and drained, because I have hope. When you got hope, you got to keep your hope alive, because that's the only thing will keep you standing and keep you moving forward. So God is saying, and promise to restore them again. So God is telling Ezekiel, he know the Israelite whole land is destroyed. He know they don't have no hope of thinking it's going to ever be restored again. So he's saying, let them know, I promise I'm going to restore this land back together. I'm going to restore this land back together. I will attach tension to you, make flesh, come upon you and cover you with skin. Now this is what God said he's going to do. And he can do it. So I will put breath in you and you will come to life. And then you will know, that I am the Lord. I just saw so many miracles that God has done around here in my life. So much miracle, doing this here. It's a lot of miracles that been done in this Bible of what I'm talking about now that I witness. So I know what God can do. So God's saying he will bring breath, back into their nation. That's what he's saying. See, these dry bones represent the Israelites. So their nation again. He will bring life back to their nation again. So right now, they think their nation is dry bones right now. But God's saying, I'm going to take the dry bones of your nation and I'm going to put some life back into it. And when they see what will happen, because God will restore a new nation. It will be new again. And then you will know, that no one but God did it. He got that nobody gonna know. You will know that it was no one but God did it. And see, God gonna always have a witness. He gonna always have a witness. That's why everything had been done. I can see it. So I know what He can do. The miracles, the power that our mighty God can do. And he about to restore this whole nation back together. He about to put some bread into this nation life again. The nation is dry bones right now. Now he about to turn them dry bones back into life. He about to give life to that nation again. Ezekiel vision reveal about the Israelite, the promise of their future. So now Ezekiel, God is telling him about the future of the Israelite. They thought it was gone. They didn't have no hope. They thought their future was gone. They thought they was doomed. And God see all the misery that they's going through right now. Sitting and praying to God for the restore their nation. They think God cannot do it because it's so terrible. It's so told out. And sometimes our life can be so told out. Sometimes you can feel like you're so doomed in life, like when is battle gonna be over with? When is this gonna be back? When things are so terrible, so told out, so destructive. Sometimes some people be scared to even pray, thinking I don't even know God can turn this around. But I'm here to tell you, He can turn it around. And a lot of time, it take a long process because He got to get His glory in the mix of this shit. He about to get His glory in the mix of this shit. All that dry bone, all that land been sitting up there just being dry for a long time. God about to put the mix in that dry land, and He about to restore, about to give it some life and bring it back to Him. And when the Israelite come back, they're gonna be a newcomer, because God want them to be a spiritual nation. That what God had wanted them when they first got into that land. So Ezekiel vision revealed about the Israelite, the promise of their future, will be restored. So I prophesied, as I was commanded. Now he's saying he prophesied as he was commanded. And as I was prophesying, there was a noise. Now, while he prophesied and talking, he said he hear noise. He hear rattling sounds. He hear bones. Came together. He hear the bones making noise, trying to come together, bones to bones. And he looked, and tension and flesh appeared on them, and skin covered them. And there was no breath in them. So he did all that, and there was no breath. You know why? Because no matter, he formed everything. He got everything into form. But no one can put breath in someone. No one cannot bring a living being back to life but God. And that's why he did the forming. He did the forming, and now he got to turn everything over to God. So to bring life, to dry bones, in unity to God people, to bring a dead nation to restore to life. Ezekiel prophesies, and they all restored to a perfect form. That's all he had got it to the form, but yet without life. Because without breath, you got no life. So he created nobody, no created power, no creature power could restore human bones to life. So he's saying no creature, no human being cannot bring bones back to life. He said, God alone, could cause them to live. He the only one can cause them to live. You can form it, but you can't bring them to life. But when Ezekiel formed them, that's why he had to turn the rest over to God. Because he, the only one, can bring breath into someone and bring them back to life. Now that Jesus did the same thing. But guess what? God was in Jesus. So whatever power Jesus was doing, it was God's power. So um, now God is with Ezekiel. You know, nobody but God, can give life. He telling Ezekiel to prophesy, to this bread. See, the first time God told him to prophesy to the bones, because God knew he couldn't bring the whole thing to life. So God told him prophesy to the bones. That was the first prophesy. Now this the second prophesy. He said prophesy to the bread. You know, prophesies, to say, son of man, and say to it, this is what the servant of the Lord say. That this is what he's supposed to speak to the bread. Come, bread, from the four wind, and bread into these slayings that they may live. Now God right there with him, just like he was with Jesus. So I prophesied that he commanded me and bread into them, and they came to life and stood up, and they stood up on their feet, a vast army, and the Israelite, Israelite is a whole nation, a whole army of a nation, so there were so many, so many bones. And when they got their body to them, when they got the bread in them, they stood up and they all marched out to their city. I saw the movie. They all marched out to their city. So Ezekiel prophesies again the second time. God told him to prophesy to the bread. And remember, God's spirit is inside Ezekiel while he's doing it. Remember earlier he said, I will put my spirit in you. So that's the reason why he was able to do it the second time. So Ezekiel prophesied the second time, bread came into them, and they lived. So let's be clear, the bread, is being referred to the Holy Spirit, of God. No one can bring the living to life but God. So now the second time, God told him to prophesy to the bread, to the Holy Spirit of God. So now God is saying to Ezekiel, these bones, are the people of Israel. So he let him know, these bones are the people of Israel. They say our bones are dried up and our hope is gone and we are cut off. And say that's what it is. This is the Israelite. Their life is like dry bones right now. They don't have no hope right now. They feel like God done cut them off right now. They feel like they don't hear from God, because they're worshiping other gods. And that's the reason why God probably not answering them. So they feel like they're cut off. They feel like they're dry bones right now. They don't have no hope at all. Their city, they're going from land to land because they've been put out of their own city. Then their land is all destroyed, tore up, so they're like, they're like dry bones right now. They don't have no hope because they feel like God will cut them off. So now God is saying to Ezekiel, these bones are the people of Israel. So God is calling Israel to be a holy nation. Separate, from the world and set apart to God. Now he was calling the entire nation. So it's not gonna be easy, for them. They think of God gonna restore the nation, make it back beautiful again, and they're just gonna move back in. No. God, they feel like they was cut off, but God was separating them from the world and set them apart to God. See, God not gonna set you apart away from Him. You see, God always separate us from the world because God want us to be having a one-on-one with Him. If God can have a one-on-one with the Israelites, He can change their mind of worshiping other gods and realize, the only God they should be serving is Him. So God was calling Israel, to be a holy nation. That was just supposed to be in at the first place when they got out of Egypt. When they got from slavery, God said, "Y'all is a holy nation. Y'all not gonna be like the other nation. Y'all holy. Y'all different. So God separate them from the world to set apart to Him. So He was calling the entire nation, to holiness. and challenges them to fulfill it. So God chose a people. Though God cut them off, He really didn't cut them off. He separated them to set them apart to Him. So therefore prophesies and said to my people. Now he's talking to Ezekiel. I need you to say this to my people. I am going to open your graves, and bring you up, from them. I will bring you back to the land of Israel. He said, I'm going to open your graves. You know, he said, I'm going to open your graves. He said, I'm going to bring you up. Remember, he brought the bones up. And when they marched, when they stood on their feet, they marched out to their land. Like God said, I will bring you back to the land of Israel, to the land that God designed for them. So then my people, will know that I am the Lord, when I open your grave and bring you up from them. God chose Ezekiel as a prophet. Remember he chose him, as a prophet. He went into vision. He was laying down and he saw vision, and then he visioned that he laying in the valley on top of a whole bunch of dead dry bones. So he will be no longer a silent specter. In the land, that God need a prophet to carry on the work of Jeremiah. So Jeremiah the prophet right now. So I guess Jeremiah getting old, and his code said, hey, he's getting old, and so God always find and see Ezekiel is a young guy. So see the young priest Ezekiel was the man chosen for performance of his test. And so he been doing a good job. He been obeying God's commands. He was telling him to prophesy the first time and the second time. He said, I did what you said. So God promised to restore them back together as one nation. So God said, I'm going to restore you back to one nation, and under one king. So I will raise you from those dry bones, to the great nation in your own land. Remember, they're out of their land. But see, when God finished with them, taking me back in their own land. So in talking I'm talking to myself also, when our situation seems so dry, like dry bones, and you lost all hope. You lost all hope, because sometimes in your pain and misery, you're suffering, sometimes you might lose your hope. Your faith might fade, but don't let it stay like that. Don't let your faith stay wavered. Don't let your hope, what I do, I keep visualizing. Visualize your future. You got to keep your hope alive. When your faith starts wavering, you got to put it back in track. We have to pray, and keep our hope alive. We see the Israelites did not pray because they were scared. They thought God had cut them off. So they were scared to pray to God, for to restore their land back together. So they lost all hope. They thought they would never, it would never be restored again. But we have an impossible God. Never think it would never happen again. Never think, your life can get back on track. Never think, if it ever gonna be back the same. I used to say those words, just like I said, you gotta watch the words that you say. We have to say in due time, we know our life gonna get back the same. That's the kind of words that we have to speak of. Because God is a possible God, that He can make everything happen. But He also do listen to the words that we say. And we keep saying, I don't know how this gonna come about. That's why He let the Israelites stood there for a long time in their misery, until He came to their rescue. Because they lost all hope. They lost all faith and hope, and they did not pray to God. They did not pray to God to help them. So God He will restore us back together. All He needs for us to connect with Him and pray. The Israelites, they were scared. They thought God cut them off. And so they did not pray. They just let their hope just went away. They had no hope at all. You know, so look what he did with Job. You know, remember Job? Job lost everything. You know, Job had hope and he had faith in God. You know, but God had restored everything back to him. You know, it may seem, it may seem impossible. It may seem, it may seem impossible to get your life back and get your life back on track like it was. You know, I'm still in the mix of my stomach. You know, and the reason why I'm still standing because I try to keep my hope alive, and I keep on praying and keeping my faith. You know, that's the three things you need in your stomach. You need to pray and be connected with God. You need to have faith, a strong faith. You know, you need to have hope, no matter how it looks. If you keep your hope alive, you know, and keep visualizing your future, you know, you'll have your hope will allow you to keep visualizing, you know, and eventually you'll feel like it's gonna come to life, you know. And see, that's what it is. They didn't have no hope, so they didn't realize that they future, if they had a future, you know. Um so it seemed impossible for one life, you know, for our life, you know, but we have to have hope, you know, in our life. You know, we have to keep the hope alive, you know, and know that God will turn it around. You got to hope, you know, you got to hope, you know, no matter how it looks, you know, because something in your soul will not let you give up, you know. So God will put my spirit. God said, I'm going to put my spirit, you know, in you know, and you will live, you know, and I will settle you in your own land. You know, so God put in his spirit, you know, when he had them bones to come back to life, that God had to put his spirit in them to make them live. You know, and God said, I'm going to settle you in your own land. You know, so then you will know that I have that I, the Lord, you know, will have spoken and I have done it, declared the Lord. You know, so they gonna know, you know, so they see how their land is. They see it's all destroyed, you know, and it must look a mess, you know, for them to know that ain't no way this shit gonna be put back together, you know. You know, who gonna clean all this up? How, you know, so they ain't have no hope at all. They ain't know how this gonna be put back together, you know. But God come along. But God gonna come along and take all that dry land, that dry bone, you know, and God gonna put life into it, bring it back to life. You know, see, God ain't got to get down with a broom and a rake and try to clean all that up like the Israelites. God got power, you know, that he can just speak words and that whole land will come back to life. You know, so the Israel was dry bones. There was the dry bones. Their nation was destroyed and it lost all hope, you know, though it was never, they thought it was never going to be restored. Now we see that God took those dry bones and our dry life, you know, and he can restore it, you know, our dry life back together. You know, God made a promise, you know, that it will be done, you know, and it will be done. You know, he gonna restore that land back together. He gonna put them back in that land, and he gonna make them a holy nation. You know, he separates them from the world. You know, separate them from the world. You know, so they can be connected to him. And sometimes God will do that. You know, God want a one-on-one with us. You know, and sometimes he have to isolate us sometimes, you know, to have a one-on-one with us. You know, so that's the word, you know, on the dry bone. You know, on the dry bone. The Israelite was a dry bone. Their land got so destroyed till they lost all hope. And it ain't know how, you know, it was gonna get put back together. You know, they did not pray to God for to restore the land back together. You know, so they said they were separated, you know, they separated from God. So they didn't know how. You know, they were scared to pray to God. You know, but God separated them from the world for a reason. You know. So we also had talk about one nation. We also talk about nation here. You know, one nation and many leaders. You know, we have many leaders. We all have responsibility that we all is trying to put this world back together. That what made me did this when I did the bones, bringing the land back together. This world will be back together. You know, it will be done. You know, so we all have leaders that we all doing our part in different areas, but we all doing for one reason, the same reason. You know, so we also had talk about we also talk about in the mix of all the chaos that constantly keep going on in the world. We have President Biden is still working, trying to save the world in other areas. See, we have different leaders in different areas. You know, we have so much needs to be done. So we all scattered all over trying to get it done. But at the end of the day, it's all being done for the same reason. You know, so he is doing this department here. He working on a big project. You know, in this project, it gonna mean that it gonna give so many people jobs, so many people jobs. You know, will help the economy and inflation. You know, so that's a good thing right there. We also talk about Mr. President Trump. He threatened people and stuff. You know, so we don't need a president that's gonna be threatening people and talking about doing things that never been done before. That's unacceptable. You know, so he have to he have to concentrate on himself. You know, on how he gonna get himself out of this situation. You know, and he had to stop throwing other people, you know, in his situation, throwing salt on everyone else, you know, and just focus on yourself and get yourself out of this situation. And while you have so much stuff going on, you know, I still was not saying nothing, but once you start threatening someone, you know, that just took a turn right there. You know, we can't have a president threatening people, hurting people. You know, a president cannot do that because a president is supposed to help and serve the whole nation, not wants to hurt and threaten someone. You know, so and we talk about